The letter sat unopened on Luca Moretti's prison desk for 3 days before he finally broke the seal. Inside, a woman named Aria wrote words that would haunt him for 2 years, promises wrapped in confession, seduction laced with unexpected honesty. She became his obsession, the only voice that reached past concrete and steel. Now, walking free 8 years early, he has one destination in mind. But Mira Collins, the real woman behind those letters, is packing her bags because the confident stranger she pretended to be never existed. And when a man like Luca discovers he's been deceived, mercy isn't guaranteed. If you're ready to see what happens when fantasy collides with reality, stay until the end, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The apartment smelled like old paper and lavender soap, 2 scents Mira Collins had convinced herself were comforting rather than pathetic. She sat cross-legged on her threadbare couch, a mug of tea growing cold in her hands, staring at her laptop screen like it might suddenly announce the world had ended. It hadn't, but hers was about to. Mafia Boss. Luca Moretti, released early after cooperation deal. The headline blinked at her from 3 different news sites, each one featuring the same photo. A man walking out of a federal courthouse, flanked by lawyers in expensive suits. He looked exactly like she remembered from the prison directory photo she'd found 2 years ago, except now there were no bars between him and the rest of the world. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. The kind of face that belonged on a movie screen, not in a mugshot. Mira's stomach dropped somewhere around her knees. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Her hands shook as she set down the mug, tea sloshing over the rim and onto a stack of library books she'd been meaning to return for 3 weeks. She didn't notice, couldn't notice, because every synapse in her brain was firing the same desperate message. Run. She'd known this day might come. Had told herself it wouldn't matter because Aria, the version of herself she'd created for those letters, wasn't real. Had never been real. Just a character she'd written into existence during a particularly lonely winter, the product of too much wine and a documentary about prison pen pal programs that had made the whole thing seem romantic instead of insane. But Luca Moretti wasn't supposed to get out early. He'd had 15 years left on his sentence. 15 years for Mira to figure out how to stop writing to him, how to ghost a man who controlled criminal operations from behind bars, how to disappear before he ever thought to look for her. Instead, he'd walked free yesterday afternoon. And according to the return address she'd stupidly, recklessly put on every single letter, he knew exactly where to find her. Mira lurched off the couch and stumbled to her bedroom, yanking a duffel bag from the top of her closet. Clothes tumbled in without organization. Underwear mixed with sweaters, a single shoe, her work badge still clipped to yesterday's cardigan. Nothing matched. Nothing made sense. But that was fine because nothing about her life made sense anymore. "Stupid," she muttered, grabbing her toothbrush from the bathroom. Stupid, stupid, stupid. 2 years ago, she'd been a different kind of lonely. The kind that made you do things that seemed harmless at the time, like signing up for a prison correspondence program under a fake name, like crafting letters to a stranger who would never meet you, never judge you, never see the real woman behind the carefully constructed words. Except she hadn't just written polite, friendly letters. No, Mira had created Aria, a bold, confident woman who worked in art galleries and traveled to Paris on impulse and knew how to flirt without second-guessing every word. Aria sent perfume-scented paper. Aria wrote about wine tastings and late-night conversations in speakeasies. Aria promised things that made Mira's face burn when she reread them in the safety of her own apartment. And Luca had written back, every single time. His letters had been different from what she'd expected. No crude advances, no manipulation, just honesty. He wrote about the monotony of prison, the way time moved differently when you had nothing but time. He wrote about his regrets, not about getting caught, but about the choices that had led him there. He asked her questions that made her think, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. She told herself it was harmless, a fantasy, 2 lonely people exchanging words that meant nothing beyond the moment. But Luca's last letter, received 3 months ago, had ended with a single line that now felt like a prophecy. "When I get out, I'm coming to find you." Mira had laughed when she'd read it, laughed because 15 years was forever, Because men like Luca Moretti didn't actually follow through on promises made to pen pals. Because Arya wasn't real and therefore couldn't be found. Except Arya had used Mira's real address. And Luca Moretti was free. The duffel bag was half full and entirely useless when Mira heard it. 3 sharp knocks on her apartment door. Her blood turned to ice. For a long moment, she didn't breathe, didn't move, just stood in her bedroom doorway, gripping the bag's strap hard enough to hurt, listening to the silence that followed those knocks. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe it was a delivery. Maybe 3 more knocks. Patient, deliberate. Mira Collins? The voice was deep, smooth, and came from the other side of 2 inches of wood that suddenly felt as insubstantial as paper. She knew that voice, had imagined it countless times while reading his letters, trying to match words to sound. But hearing it now, in her apartment building's dingy hallway, made her want to crawl into her closet and never come out. "I know you're home," Luca said, and there wasn't a hint of threat in his tone, just certainty. "Your car's in the lot. Lights are on." Mira's lungs forgot how to work. "I'm not here to hurt you," he continued, still speaking through the door like they were having a normal conversation. "I just want to talk." Talk, right. Because when a man with a criminal record and enough power to walk out of prison early showed up at your door, talking was definitely all he had in mind. Her phone was on the kitchen counter. She could call 911, tell them, what? That a man she'd been writing intimate letters to for 2 years was outside her apartment, and she was scared because she'd lied about who she was? Arya. The name froze her in place. "I've been looking forward to meeting you," Luca said, and something in his voice shifted, became warmer, almost gentle. 2 years is a long time to wait. Shame washed over her in a wave so strong she nearly dropped the duffel bag. He thought she was Arya, still thought she was the confident, worldly woman from the letters. The woman who didn't exist outside of Mira's desperate imagination and too many glasses of cheap wine. She should correct him, should open the door and confess everything before this went any further, but fear won. "I'm not..." Her voice came out as a croak. She cleared her throat, tried again. "I can't talk right now." Silence from the hallway. Then, "Are you scared of me?" The question was so direct, so unexpectedly vulnerable, that Mira's carefully constructed panic stuttered. "Should I be?" she asked before she could stop herself. A pause. "No," Luca said finally. "But I understand if you are." Mira pressed her palm against the wall, needing something solid to anchor herself. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. In her imagination, in the rare moments she'd let herself think about what would happen if they ever met, she'd pictured anger, betrayal, maybe violence, though she'd tried not to think about that part too hard. She hadn't pictured this calm, patient man on the other side of her door, sounding almost uncertain. "I wrote you letters," she said, the words tumbling out. "That's all, just letters." "I know." You don't actually know me." Another pause, longer this time. "Don't I?" The question hit harder than it should have, because the truth was complicated and messy and made her chest ache. Luca knew things about her that no one else did. Fears she'd confessed at 2 a.m. while pretending to be someone else, dreams she'd never spoken aloud, the specific kind of loneliness that came from being invisible in a crowd. But he knew Arya, not Mira. "Please leave," she whispered. "Okay." The agreement came so quickly it shocked her. "Okay?" she repeated. "I'm not going to force this," Luca said. "You wrote to me because you wanted to. I'm here because I wanted to meet you, but if you want me gone, I'll go." Mira squeezed her eyes shut. This would be easier if he were the monster she'd half convinced herself he was. Easier if he kicked down the door, if he demanded, if he gave her a concrete reason to be terrified beyond her own cowardice. "I'm staying at the Meridian Hotel," he continued when she didn't respond. "Room 412. If you change your mind, if you want to talk, I'll be there." Footsteps retreated down the hallway. Mira stood frozen, listening to them fade, half convinced this was a trick, that he'd wait around the corner or come back in 5 minutes, or... The building's exterior door opened and closed. Through her window, she watched a black car pull away from the curb. Then she was alone with nothing but her half-packed duffel bag and the crushing weight of her own dishonesty. Mira didn't sleep. She spent the night sitting on her couch, laptop open, reading everything she could find about Luca Moretti. Most of it she already knew, the basics of his case, the organization he'd run, the cooperation deal that had cut his sentence. But there were details she'd missed before, small things that took on new significance now. A photo of him at 18, before everything went wrong. He'd been smiling, arm around a girl who turned out to be his sister. The caption mentioned she'd died in a car accident 2 months after the photo was taken, an interview with one of the prosecutors who'd wanted to put him away for life. Moretti wasn't like the others. He had lines he wouldn't cross. That's what made him dangerous. He had principles, even if they were bent. A blog post from someone claiming to have worked for him. He paid for my kid's surgery when insurance wouldn't cover it. Didn't ask for anything in return. I'm not saying he was the good man, but he wasn't the devil either. By 3 a.m, Mira's eyes burned and her tea had gone cold for the 4th time. She closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out what she was supposed to do now. The smart thing would be to run, change her number, stay with a friend in another city, let this whole thing fade into an embarrassing story she'd never tell anyone. But Luca knew where she worked. The library wasn't exactly a secret, and she'd been stupid enough to mention it in one of her letters. If he wanted to find her again, he could. And if she ran, she'd spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, wondering when he'd show up. The other option, the one that made her stomach churn, was to face this, to tell him the truth and deal with whatever came after. Mira laughed, the sound bitter in the quiet apartment. Face it, right, because she was so good at confrontation, so brave, so much like the woman she'd pretended to be. Her phone buzzed. For a wild second, she thought it might be Luca, but no. He didn't have her number. She'd been careful about that, at least. It was her friend Rachel. Coffee tomorrow? You've been MIA lately. Mira stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Rachel was normal, practical, the kind of person who would absolutely lose her mind if Mira confessed to writing love letters to a mafia boss under a fake name. She typed back, "Can't tomorrow." "Rain check?" The lie came easily. It always did. The library was Mira's safe place. Between the worn carpet and the smell of old books, the predictable rhythm of checkouts and returns, she could pretend the rest of the world didn't exist. She'd worked there for 6 years, long enough that the building felt more like home than her apartment ever had. But walking in the next morning, everything felt wrong. She jumped at every sound. Every time the front door opened, her heart seized. She shelved books in the wrong sections, stammered through a conversation with a regular patron about his overdue fines, and spilled coffee on a new shipment of bestsellers. "You okay?" her coworker Marcus asked around noon, leaning against the circulation desk. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," Mira said automatically. "Uh-huh." Marcus didn't look convinced. "You want to take lunch early? I can cover." She should say no, should stay busy. Stay distracted. But the thought of sitting in the break room alone, jumping at shadows, made her want to scream. "Yeah," she said. "Thanks." The coffee shop down the block was crowded enough that Mira could disappear into a corner booth with her sandwich and a book she had no intention of actually reading. She picked at the bread, stomach too knotted to eat, and tried not to think about the hotel room 4 blocks away where Luca was probably wondering why the woman he'd been writing to for 2 years was too much of a coward to face him. "Mind if I sit?" Mira's head snapped up. Luca Moretti stood beside her booth, holding a cup of black coffee, looking exactly as overwhelming in person as she'd feared. Tall, easily over 6 feet, broad shoulders under a dark coat that probably cost more than her rent. Those eyes that had stared out from his mugshot now fixed on her with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. "How did you—" The word stuck in her throat. "You mentioned you worked at the library," he said calmly, like this was a normal interaction between normal people. "Only one in walking distance from your apartment. Figured you'd take lunch somewhere close." He'd been looking for her. Part of Mira wanted to bolt. The larger part was frozen, trapped between panic and something she couldn't quite name. "I'm not Arya," she blurted out. Luca's expression didn't change. "I know." "You what?" He gestured to the empty seat across from her. "Can I?" Mira nodded, numb. He sat down, setting his coffee on the table between them with careful precision. Up close, she could see the small details the photos had missed. A scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his hands moved with deliberate control, like he was constantly aware of his own strength. "You knew?" she managed. "I suspected." Luca took a sip of his coffee. "About 6 months in." The sandwich in Mira's hand felt like cardboard. "Then why did I keep writing?" He met her eyes, and there was something in his gaze that made her chest tight. Because the woman behind those letters was more interesting than the fantasy. Mira's brain stuttered to a halt. "You're not a good liar," Luca continued, and there was no cruelty in the observation, just fact. The confident parts, those felt rehearsed, but the things you let slip, the moments you forgot to perform, those were real. Those were you. Heat flooded her face. "I don't understand." "You wrote about being invisible," he said quietly. "About walking into rooms and feeling like you were made of glass. About working in a library because books were safer than people." He paused. "Arya, the version you were trying to be, wouldn't write things like that." Mira couldn't look at him, couldn't breathe properly. Every word felt like he was peeling back her skin, exposing things she'd never meant to show. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For lying, for wasting your time, for what?" "Mira." The way he said her name stopped her. Not harsh, just solid, real. "You didn't waste my time." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I've had a lot of time to think," Luca said. 2 years in a cell with nothing but your letters and my own regrets. You know what I figured out?" She shook her head. "Everyone performs. Everyone puts on a version of themselves they think the world wants to see. You were more obvious about it." His mouth curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. "But the real you kept showing through, and that's who I wanted to meet." Mira's throat burned. "You don't know me." "Maybe not everything," he agreed, "but I know you're scared right now. I know you're probably planning how to run, where to go, how to disappear." He leaned back, giving her space. "I know you think I'm angry about the deception." "Aren't you?" "No." The answer was so simple, so direct, that it punched through her defenses. "I don't understand," she said again, hating how small her voice sounded. Luca was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in slow circles. "In prison, everyone has an angle. Everyone wants something. But your letters, they weren't trying to get anything from me. You weren't asking for money, or favors, or connections." He looked up. "You were just lonely, and honest about it, even when you were trying not to be." "That doesn't make it okay," Mira said. "I still lied about who I was." "Did you?" He tilted his head slightly. "Or did you just try to be braver on paper than you felt in real life?" The question hung between them, unanswerable. "I don't know what you want from me," Mira whispered. "Nothing you're not willing to give," Luca said. "But I'd like to know you, the real you. Not Arya, not whoever you think I want you to be, just you." It should have been romantic, should have felt like something out of the fantasy she'd built in those letters. But sitting across from him in a crowded coffee shop, watching the way he watched her, calm, patient, like he had all the time in the world, Mira felt something closer to terror. Because Luca Moretti was real. And she had no idea how to be real back. "I'm not interesting," she said finally. "I work in a library. I go home and watch TV. I haven't been to Paris. I don't know anything about wine. I'm just boring." "You wrote me letters for 2 years," Luca said. "That's not boring. That's pathetic." "No." His voice sharpened slightly. "That's courage." Mira almost laughed. "Lying to someone from the safety of my apartment isn't courage. Reaching out to a stranger is, trying to connect even if you had to pretend to do it. That takes something." He finished his coffee, set the cup down. "I've known a lot of people who couldn't manage that much." She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process the way he was looking at her. Not like she had disappointed him, but like he was still figuring her out and didn't mind taking his time. "I need to get back to work," she said, standing up too quickly. Luca stood too, slower. "Okay. I can't." I'm not asking you to decide anything right now, he said. I just wanted you to know I'm not going anywhere. That should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like a promise and a threat all at once. Mira grabbed her bag, leaving half her sandwich uneaten. At the door, she looked back. Luca was still standing by the booth, hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Why me?" she asked. He considered the question for a long moment. "Because you saw me," he said finally. "Not the conviction, not the reputation, just me. And I'd like the chance to do the same for you." Mira left before she could respond, before the weight of those words could crush her completely. But that night, alone in her apartment with the deadbolt locked and every light on, she pulled out the box where she'd kept every letter he'd ever sent her, reread them with new eyes, looking for the places where he'd known, where he'd seen through her performance to the frightened woman underneath. They were everywhere. Small comments that had seemed casual at the time now felt deliberate. "You don't have to impress me. I'm already impressed." Or, "The things you're afraid to say are usually the things worth hearing." He'd known, and he'd kept writing anyway. Mira closed the box and sat in the dark, listening to the building settle around her, trying to figure out what scared her more. The possibility that Luca Moretti was dangerous, or the possibility that he was exactly what he seemed to be. Human, flawed, and genuinely interested in knowing her. Both options felt impossible. Both options felt like they might destroy her. But only one felt like it might also save her. At 2 in the morning, Mira pulled out her phone and stared at the address he'd given her. Room 412 at the Meridian Hotel, 4 blocks away. Close enough to reach in 10 minutes if she ran. Far enough that she'd have time to change her mind. Her thumb hovered over the screen, typing and deleting a message 6 times before she finally settled on something simple. "I don't know how to do this." She sent it before she could reconsider. 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Neither do I, but I'd like to try." Mira read the message 3 times, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Then she set the phone down, pulled a blanket over herself, and tried to sleep. Tomorrow, she'd figure out if she was brave enough to be herself. Tonight, she'd just try to survive the fact that someone wanted to see her anyway. Mira didn't go to the hotel that night, or the next morning, or the day after that. Instead, she went to work, shelved books with shaking hands, and pretended everything was normal while her phone sat in her pocket like a live grenade. Luca didn't text again, didn't show up at the library, didn't push. Somehow, that made it worse. By Friday, Rachel cornered her in the break room. "Okay, spill," Rachel said, blocking the door with her body. She was small, barely 5'3", but she had the energy of someone twice her size and zero patience for evasion. "You've been weird all week, jumpier than usual, and that's saying something." "I'm fine," Mira said automatically. "You're a terrible liar." Rachel crossed her arms. "Is it a guy?" Mira's face must have done something incriminating because Rachel's eyes went wide. "Holy shit, it is a guy. Who? When? Why didn't you tell me?" It's complicated." "Complicated how? Is he married? A coworker? Oh my God, is it Marcus? Because I always thought It's not Marcus," Mira said quickly. "And we're not together. We've been talking." Rachel's expression shifted from excitement to concern. "Talking how? Please tell me you're not doing one of those online dating things where the guy turns out to be a catfish." Close enough to make Mira's stomach turn. "He's real," she said. "I've met him. It's just, I don't know if I can handle it." "Handle what?" "Him. The whole thing. He's too much." Rachel studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "Mira, I say this with love, but you think ordering pizza is too much. What's actually going on?" The urge to confess everything hit Mira so hard she had to bite her tongue. But she couldn't. Couldn't explain the letters, the lies, the fact that she'd been writing to a criminal for 2 years, and he'd somehow turned out to be more decent than most men she'd met in normal circumstances. "He knows things about me," she said carefully. "Real things. And I'm scared." "Of him?" "Of disappointing him." Rachel's expression softened. "Oh, honey, if he knows the real you and he's still around, I don't think you have to worry about that." If only it were that simple. That night, Mira sat on her couch with her phone in her hand, rereading Luca's last message for the 100th time. Neither do I. But I'd like to try. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She typed, "Can we meet somewhere public?" Deleted it. Typed, "I need more time." Deleted that too. Finally settled on, "Tomorrow. Coffee shop on 5th. Noon." She hit send before she could spiral into another round of second-guessing. The reply came within 30 seconds. "I'll be there." Mira set the phone down and tried to convince herself she hadn't just made a terrible mistake. The coffee shop was more crowded on Saturday than it had been during the weekday lunch rush. Mira arrived 15 minutes early, claimed a corner table, and spent the wait regretting every decision that had led to this moment. She'd changed clothes 4 times that morning, finally settling on jeans and a sweater that Rachel had once called Librarian chic, in a tone that suggested it wasn't a compliment. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had already started to come loose. She looked exactly like what she was, a nervous woman who had no idea what she was doing. Luca walked in at exactly noon. He spotted her immediately, navigating through the crowd with the kind of ease that came from being comfortable in his own skin. Today he wore dark jeans and a gray Henley that somehow looked expensive despite its simplicity. Several women tracked his movement across the room. He didn't seem to notice. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I wasn't sure I would," Mira admitted. "I know." He flagged down a server, ordered black coffee. "What changed your mind?" "I'm still trying to figure that out." The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "Fair enough." The server brought his coffee. Mira wrapped her hands around her own cup, needing something to hold on to. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "The whole getting to know someone thing. I'm not good at it." "You did fine in your letters." "That was different. I had time to think about what to say. Time to edit." "You still have time now," Luca said. "I'm not going anywhere." That patient certainty should have been reassuring. Instead, it made Mira's chest tight. "Why?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "Why do you care? You don't know me." "Not really. And what you do know, the real me, isn't exactly impressive." Luca took a sip of his coffee, considering. "What do you think I should care about?" "I don't know. Someone more like Arya. Someone confident and interesting and fake?" The word landed like a slap. "Arya wasn't real," Luca continued, his voice gentle despite the bluntness. "She was a character you created because you didn't think being yourself was enough. But the things that made your letters matter, the honesty, the vulnerability, the way you saw the world, those came from you, not her." Mira stared at her coffee. "You make it sound simple." "It's not, but it's true." Silence stretched between them. Around the shop, life continued, people laughing, ordering, living their uncomplicated lives. Mira envied them. "Tell me something," Luca said finally. "Something real. Doesn't have to be big. Just something that's actually yours." Mira's mind went blank. Every truth about herself felt too small or too embarrassing to speak aloud. "I hate my laugh," she said eventually. "It's too loud and weird. So I trained myself to do this quiet version that sounds more normal. But sometimes I forget. And the real one comes out and I want to disappear." Luca's expression didn't change. "What else?" "I eat cereal for dinner at least 4 times a week because cooking for one person feels depressing." "Keep going." "I've never traveled anywhere. The farthest I've been from home is a conference in Chicago, and I spent the whole time in my hotel room because cities make me anxious." "More." Mira's throat closed. She forced the words out anyway. "I wrote to you because I was so lonely I couldn't stand it anymore. And I made up Arya because I didn't think you'd want to write back to someone like me." Luca set down his cup. "Someone like you. Boring, invisible. The kind of person who blends into wallpaper." "You know what I did yesterday?" he asked, the shift in topic jarring. Mira shook her head. "I walked around this city for 6 hours. Just walked, trying to figure out how to exist in the world again after 2 years of concrete and bars and routine." He leaned back. "And you know what I realized?" "What?" "Everyone's performing. The guy in the suit pretending his phone call is important. The woman at the crosswalk checking her reflection in every store window. The teenagers trying to look like they don't care what anyone thinks. Everyone's Arya. Everyone's pretending to be more than they feel." "That doesn't make it okay," Mira said. No, but it makes it human. He met her eyes. You're not special because you're flawed, Mira. You're special because you admitted it. The words settled over her like a weight, not crushing exactly, just heavy. I don't know what you want from me, she whispered. I want to know what makes you laugh, the real laugh, not the edited version. I want to know what books you read when you're having a bad day. I want to understand why you thought you had to be someone else to be worth knowing. That's a lot. We've got time. Mira's hands trembled around her cup. What if I can't? What if I'm too much of a coward? Then we'll figure that out too. Luca's voice was steady. Sure. But I don't think you're a coward. I think you're scared. There's a difference. Before Mira could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it automatically, a text from Marcus asking if she could cover part of his shift tomorrow. Work? Luca asked. Yeah. My coworker needs coverage. You like it? The library? The question was so normal, so mundane that it threw her. I love it, she said, surprised by her own honesty. It's quiet, predictable. I know where everything is supposed to go, and the people who come in, they're usually looking for something specific, an answer, an escape. I like being able to help with that. Makes sense. Does it? You're good at creating order, Luca said. The letters were like that too. Organized, careful. Even when you were trying to be spontaneous, there was structure underneath. Mira didn't know whether to be impressed or unnerved that he'd noticed. What about you? She asked, desperate to shift focus. What are you doing now that you're out? His expression shuddered slightly. Trying to figure that out. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He paused. I can't go back to what I was doing before. That life's done, but I don't know what comes next. That must be terrifying. It is. The admission came easily, like he wasn't ashamed of it. Everything's different. The world moved on while I was locked up. Technology, people, the way things work. I feel like I'm learning a foreign language. Mira understood that feeling more than she wanted to admit. Different circumstances, same isolation. Is that why you came looking for me? She asked. Because I was familiar? Partly. Luca's gaze held hers. But mostly because your letters were the only thing that felt real during those 2 years. Everyone else wanted something, or was afraid of me, or treated me like a problem to solve. You just talked to me. Like I was a person. You are a person. Not everyone sees it that way. The weight of that statement hung between them. Mira thought about the articles she'd read, the comment sections full of people who saw Luca as nothing more than his worst decisions. She'd been guilty of it too at first, reducing him to a headline, a story, a safe distance. I see it, she said quietly. Something in Luca's expression shifted, softened. I know, he said. They sat in silence for a while, the coffee shop noise washing over them. It should have been awkward, should have felt forced, but somehow it wasn't. Can I ask you something? Mira said finally. Anything. Are you angry about the letters, the lying, all of it? Luca considered the question. No. Disappointed maybe, for about 5 minutes when I first figured it out. But angry? No. Why not? Because I understood it. He traced the rim of his cup with one finger. I've spent my whole life being what other people needed me to be. Strong, dangerous, in control. I know what it's like to perform a version of yourself until you forget where the act ends and you begin. Is that what happened to you? Yeah. The word was heavy. I became what people expected, and by the time I realized it was killing me, I was in too deep to get out. Mira's chest ached. Do you regret it? Every day? He looked up. But I'm trying to do better, be better, figure out who I actually am under all the bullshit. That's brave. Luca laughed, the sound surprising. I've been called a lot of things. Brave isn't usually one of them. Well, it should be. The words came out more forcefully than Mira intended. Luca's eyebrows rose. Sorry, she said quickly. Everyone acts like changing is easy, like you can just decide to be different and that's it. But it's not. It's terrifying, and you're doing it anyway. So are you, Luca pointed out. I'm sitting in a coffee shop. That's not exactly revolutionary. You're sitting across from someone who scares you, someone you lied to, and you're being honest anyway. He tilted his head. That's not nothing. Mira wanted to argue, wanted to minimize it, but something in his expression stopped her. Okay, she said instead. Okay? Okay. Maybe it's not nothing. The corner of Luca's mouth curved. Progress. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus, this one with 3 question marks. Mira sighed. I should probably answer him. Go ahead. She typed out a quick response, aware of Luca watching her. Not in a creepy way, just observant, like he was trying to memorize the details. Does it bother you? She asked, setting the phone down. Being stared at? You get used to it. People are curious, or scared, or both. I'm not scared of you, Mira said, then paused. Okay, that's a lie. I am, but not because I think you'll hurt me. Then why? Because you see me, really see me, and I don't know what to do with that. Luca was quiet for a moment. Would it help if I told you I'm just as scared? Of what? Disappointing you, being less than what you imagined. He shrugged. In your letters, I could be anyone. I could edit myself, show you the parts that made sense, and hide the rest. But now you're here, and I'm here, and there's no buffer, just 2 people trying to figure out if they actually like each other. The honesty of it knocked something loose in Mira's chest. I like you, she blurted out, then immediately wanted to take it back. I mean, I don't know you well enough to really like you, but what I do know, I like, which sounds stupid. I'm making this worse. You're not, Luca said, and he was definitely smiling now. Small, but real. And for what it's worth, I like you too. Mira's face burned. Even though I'm a mess? Especially because you're a mess. Perfect people are boring. I am definitely not perfect. Good. They ordered more coffee. Talked about nothing important. The books on Mira's nightstand, the weirdness of using a smartphone after 2 years of prison landlines, her catastrophic attempt at growing herbs on her apartment windowsill. Easy things, surface things. But underneath, something was shifting. It was nearly 3 when Mira finally checked the time and realized she'd been sitting there for hours. I should go, she said reluctantly. I have things, errands. It was a weak excuse and they both knew it. Luca stood when she did. Can I walk you home? Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to maintain distance, to keep him safely contained in public spaces where she could escape if things got too real. But she was tired of running. Okay, she said. They walked in silence for the first block. The afternoon sun was weak, the air carrying the bite of approaching winter. Mira shoved her hands in her pockets and tried not to overthink the fact that Luca matched his pace to hers, keeping a careful distance that felt respectful rather than distant. Thank you, he said as they turned onto her street. For what? Giving me a chance. I know it wasn't easy. Mira thought about the panic attacks, the sleepless nights, the urge to pack a bag and disappear. It really wasn't. But you did it anyway. Jury's still out on whether that was smart. Probably wasn't, Luca agreed. But I'm glad you did. They stopped outside her building. Mira looked up at the familiar brick facade, the window of her apartment on the 3rd floor where she could see the lamp she'd left on that morning. So, she said, not quite meeting his eyes. What happens now? That's up to you. I'm bad at decisions. Then don't make one yet. Luca's voice was patient. We can take this as slow as you need, and if I decide I can't do it, then I'll respect that. The answer should have been reassuring. Instead, it made Mira's chest tight with something that felt dangerously close to disappointment. I'm not good at this, she said again, hating how small she sounded. Neither am I. We'll figure it out together. Mira finally looked at him, really looked. At the man who'd spent 2 years in prison writing back to a stranger, who'd tracked her down but hadn't pushed, who saw through her lies and chose to stay anyway. I'm going to mess this up, she warned. Probably. I will too. That's not comforting. It's honest. Despite everything, Mira felt her mouth curve. I hate that you're right. Get used to it, Luca said, and this time his smile reached his eyes. Mira's phone buzzed. She ignored it. "I should go up," she said, not moving. "Okay, but I don't want to." The confession slipped out before she could stop it. Luca's expression softened. "Then don't. Not yet." So they stood there on the sidewalk like idiots, neither quite ready to leave, both too uncertain to suggest anything else. "This is weird, right?" Mira said. "This whole situation?" "Extremely." "Good. I thought it was just me." A car passed, bass thumping. Somewhere above them, a window opened and closed. The world kept spinning, indifferent to the small revolution happening between two people who had no business trusting each other. "I have errands tomorrow," Mira said suddenly. "Grocery store, library book drop-off, incredibly boring stuff." Luca waited. "You could, if you wanted, you could come. With me, if you're not busy." She braced for rejection, for him to realize she was serious about the boring part and decide he had better things to do. "What time?" he asked. 10? "I'll be here." Mira blinked. "Really? You think I have a packed social calendar?" "I don't know, maybe. You're you." "I'm a guy with nothing but time and nowhere to be," Luca said. "Grocery shopping sounds perfect." "You're weird. You wrote letters to a stranger in prison for 2 years. I think we're both weird." "Fair point." Mira pulled out her keys, fidgeting with the metal. "Okay, tomorrow, 10. Don't be late." "Wouldn't dream of it." She made it 3 steps toward the door before turning back. "Luca?" He'd been walking away but stopped immediately. "Yeah? I'm glad you found me. Even though it's terrifying and I still don't know what I'm doing, I'm glad." Something in his expression shifted, became vulnerable in a way that made him look younger, less certain. "Me too," he said. Mira nodded, then fled into her building before she could say anything else stupid. Upstairs, she collapsed against her apartment door and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in her chest for days. Her phone buzzed again. This time she looked. "Rachel, how's the guy's situation?" Mira stared at the message, then typed, "I think I'm in over my head." The response came immediately. "Good. You needed to get wet anyway." Despite everything, Mira laughed. The real laugh, loud and ugly and completely uncontrolled. And for once, she didn't feel the need to apologize for it. That night, she didn't panic, didn't pack a bag or plan escape routes or spiral into worst-case scenarios. Instead, she sat on her couch with a cup of tea and one of Luca's letters, the 5th one he'd sent, back when she'd still been pretending to be Aria, but the cracks were starting to show. "You wrote about feeling invisible," the letter said in his careful handwriting, "like you could disappear and no one would notice. I understand that, but I want you to know something. I would notice. Your words matter. You matter. Don't forget that." She'd cried when she'd first read it, alone in her apartment with a bottle of wine and too much honesty. Reading it now, knowing he'd already suspected the truth, knowing he'd written it anyway, it hit different. Mira set the letter aside and pulled out her laptop, opened a blank document, then she started writing. Not a letter this time, just thoughts, truths, the things she'd been too scared to say out loud. "I'm terrified of you," she typed. "Not because you're dangerous, though you are, but because you make me want to be braver than I am. You make me want to stop hiding, and I don't know if I'm capable of that. But I want to try. I want to be the kind of person who deserves the way you look at me. I want to stop running." She didn't send it, didn't plan to, but writing it felt like something, a start. Outside her window, the city hummed. Somewhere out there, Luca was probably in his hotel room, dealing with his own uncertainty. And tomorrow, they'd go grocery shopping like normal people. The thought should have been absurd. Instead, it felt like the bravest thing she'd ever done. Mira closed the laptop and went to bed. For the first time in a week, she slept straight through the night. When she woke up, sunlight was streaming through her window and her phone showed a single message from Luca. "Still good for 10? She typed back, "Yes. Fair warning, I'm very particular about produce." His response? "I'd expect nothing less." Mira smiled at her phone, then immediately felt ridiculous for smiling at her phone. But she didn't stop. At 9:45, she stood in front of her closet, trying to figure out what one wore at a grocery shop with a former mafia boss. Everything felt wrong, too formal, too casual, too much like she was trying too hard. Finally, she settled on jeans and a green sweater Rachel had given her last Christmas. Nothing special, just her. Luca was waiting outside her building at exactly 10, looking unfairly good in dark jeans and a jacket that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Morning," he said. "Hi." Mira adjusted her purse strap. "This is really happening?" "Appears so." "And you're sure you want to spend your Saturday watching me debate apples?" "Positive." "You're strange." "You've mentioned." They walked to the grocery store 3 blocks over, falling into an easy rhythm. Mira grabbed a cart, hyper-aware of how domestic this was. How normal. "So," Luca said as they entered the produce section. "What's the apple situation?" "Honeycrisp or nothing," Mira said seriously. "Everything else is a waste of time." "Strong opinion." "I work in a library. Strong opinions about mundane things are all I have." She picked through the apples, examining each one with the kind of focus usually reserved for hostage negotiations. Luca watched, amused. "You weren't kidding about being particular," he said. "I warned you." They moved through the store slowly. Mira grabbed pasta, sauce, the cereal she lived on. Luca offered commentary on nothing important. The aggressive number of chip flavors, the mystery of why stores kept rearranging everything, the fact that he'd forgotten how overwhelming choices were after prison commissary. It was the most normal hour Mira had spent in weeks. At checkout, Luca reached for his wallet. "Absolutely not," Mira said. "I don't mind." "No." He raised his hands in surrender. "Okay." Outside, bags in hand, they stood on the sidewalk. "Now what?" Luca asked. Mira should have said goodbye, should have thanked him for coming and retreated to her apartment. Instead, she heard herself say, "There's a park 2 blocks over. Want to walk?" "Yeah, I do." The park was small, mostly empty on a Saturday morning. They found a bench overlooking a pond where ducks congregated, hoping for breadcrumbs. "Thank you," Mira said, setting her grocery bags down. "For this. For being patient. For not giving up on me even though I'm a disaster." "You're not a disaster." "I'm sitting in a park with a man I met through prison letters." "That's pretty disaster adjacent." Luca laughed. A real laugh, warm and unexpected. "Fair point." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the ducks argue over territory. "Can I tell you something?" Mira asked. "Always." "I'm still scared of this, of you, of messing up, but I'm less scared than I was, and I think that's progress." "It is," Luca said quietly. "I don't know where this goes, if it goes anywhere, but I want to find out." He turned to look at her. "Yeah?" "Yeah." The word hung between them, fragile and honest and terrifying. Luca reached over, slow enough that Mira could have pulled back. His hand covered hers where it rested on the bench. "One step at a time," he said. Mira looked down at their hands, his larger, scarred, careful, hers smaller, trembling slightly. "One step at a time," she echoed, and for the first time since this whole thing started, she believed they might actually make it. The easy rhythm they'd found that morning shattered exactly 6 days later. Mira was restocking the biography section when she felt it, that prickle on the back of her neck that meant someone was watching. She turned, expecting to find a patron needing help or Marcus goofing off between tasks. Instead, she found a stranger. He was standing at the end of the aisle, hands in the pockets of an expensive coat, looking at her with the kind of assessment that made her skin crawl. Not sexual, clinical. Like she was a problem he was calculating how to solve. "Can I help you?" Mira asked, proud that her voice only shook a little. "You, Mira Collins?" Everything in her body screamed danger. "Who's asking?" The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Vincent. I work for someone who's concerned about Luca's new friendship." Mira's heart kicked against her ribs. She glanced toward the circulation desk where Marcus was helping an elderly woman check out a stack of mysteries. Too far to call for help without making a scene. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "Sure you don't." Vincent took a step closer. "Pretty little librarian. Love letters to a man in prison. It's sweet, really. Innocent. But Luca's not innocent, and the people he used to run with don't appreciate him going soft over some nobody." The word stung more than it should have. You should leave, Mira said, hating the tremor in her voice. In a minute. I just wanted to deliver a message. Vincent's smile widened. Whatever you think is happening between you two, it's a fantasy. Luca's got responsibilities, debts, and playing house with a civilian isn't part of that picture. He's done with that life, Mira said, the words coming out more forcefully than she'd intended. He told you what you wanted to hear. That's what men like Luca do. Vincent shrugged. I'm not saying he doesn't like you. Maybe he does. But when push comes to shove, he's one of us. Not one of you. Mira's hands clenched around the book she was holding. Get out. Touchy. Vincent backed toward the aisle entrance. Just think about it, Mira. Ask yourself what happens when his old life catches up, because it will. And when it does, you're going to be the one who gets hurt. He left as quietly as he'd arrived, disappearing into the stacks before Mira could decide whether to call security or just collapse. She made it to the break room before her hand started shaking, pulled out her phone, stared at Luca's name in her contacts, then put it away. Because what was she supposed to say? Some guy showed up and threatened her, warned her off? And what would Luca do? The thought of him confronting Vincent, of violence erupting because of her, made her stomach turn. Maybe Vincent was right. Maybe this whole thing was a fantasy she'd been stupid enough to believe. Mira made it through her shift on autopilot, smiled at patrons, shelved books, pretended her world wasn't tilting sideways. When her phone buzzed with a text from Luca, "Dinner tonight? I found a place that makes terrible pasta and I need a second opinion." She stared at it for a full minute before responding. "Can't tonight. Work stuff." The lie tasted bitter. His reply came quickly. "Everything okay?" "Fine. Just tired." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Okay, tomorrow?" Mira didn't answer. She went home, locked her door, and sat in the dark trying to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. The knock came at 8:30. Mira knew it was Luca before she checked the peephole. Something about the rhythm. Patient but insistent. "I know you're in there," he said through the door. "Your light's on." She could pretend she wasn't home, could wait him out. Instead, she opened the door. Luca took one look at her face and his expression darkened. "What happened?" "Nothing." "Mira, I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar. We've established this." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, closing the door behind him. "Talk to me." The concern in his voice made something in her chest crack. "Someone came to the library today," she said. "Said his name was Vincent. He knew about us. About the letters. He told me you were playing me. That you're still connected to your old life and I'm just temporary." Luca went very still. "What did he look like?" Mira described him, the expensive coat, the calculating eyes, the smile that wasn't a smile. "Vincent Russo," Luca said, the name coming out flat. "He works for Marco De Luca. Used to work for me. He said you have responsibilities, debts." "He's wrong." "Is he?" The question burst out before Mira could stop it. "Because I don't actually know, do I? I know what you've told me, but that's not the same as knowing." Luca's jaw tightened. "You think I lied to you? I think you told me what you thought I needed to hear, which is basically the same thing." "It's not." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding into his movements. "I told you the truth. I'm done with that life. The cooperation deal, the testimony. I burned those bridges. There's no going back." "Then why is Vincent showing up at my job?" "Because Marco's pissed. I testified against 3 of his people. Put them away for a long time. He wants to send a message. By threatening me." "Yeah." Luca's voice was rough. "By threatening you." Mira wrapped her arms around herself. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. I'll handle it." "How?" "By going back to being the person you said you weren't anymore?" She shook her head. "Vincent was right about one thing. Nobody. And you. This was always going to end badly." "Don't do that," Luca said sharply. "Don't use this as an excuse to run." "It's not an excuse, it's reality." Mira's voice cracked. "You come from a world I don't understand. A world where people threaten librarians to make points. And I'm just I can't handle that. So what? You're done? Just like that? I don't know. The words came out too loud. Mira pressed her hands to her face. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, Luca. Not of you. Of everything around you. Of the fact that being with you might mean looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. You're right. Mira looked up. What? You're right to be scared. Vincent showing up proves that just being near me puts you at risk, and I can't promise it won't happen again. He met her eyes. But I can promise I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe, so that's not enough. I know. He moved closer, slowly. But it's all I've got. That and the fact that walking away from you feels impossible. You barely know me. I know enough. Luca stopped a few feet away, giving her space. I know you eat cereal for dinner and hate your laugh and think you're invisible. I know you're braver than you think and kinder than you believe. I know that talking to you is the first thing that's felt real since I got out. Mira's throat burned. This isn't fair. Life rarely is. I'm not strong enough for this. You're stronger than you think. Stop saying that, Mira whispered. Stop making me want to believe it. Luca's expression softened. What if I told you I'm just as scared as you are? I'd say you're lying to make me feel better. I'm not. This, he gestured between them, terrifies me. Because I don't know how to be good at it. Don't know how to be the kind of man who deserves someone like you. And I'm constantly waiting for you to realize you made a mistake. The admission hit Mira square in the chest. That's ridiculous, she said. You're you. Exactly. I'm a guy with a criminal record and enemies and no idea how to build a normal life. You think I don't lie awake wondering what the hell I'm doing? Wondering when you'll figure out I'm not worth the trouble? Mira stared at him. You really believe that? Every day. Something shifted in her chest, because standing in front of her wasn't the confident man who'd tracked her down or the patient stranger who'd waited for her to stop running. This was just Luca, flawed and uncertain and trying anyway. I don't want you to handle Vincent, she said quietly. Mira, I don't want you going back to that. Being that. Not for me. Then what do you want? She thought about it, really thought about it. About Vincent's smug face and his calculating threats. About the fear that had been her constant companion for weeks. About Luca standing in her apartment, offering protection she didn't know how to accept. I want to not be afraid, she said finally. But I don't know how to do that. We figure it out together. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Luca took another step closer. I can't make Vincent disappear, can't erase my past or guarantee no one else will come looking, but I can promise I won't let them touch you, and I can promise I'll be honest about what we're up against. What are we up against? Marco's going to keep pushing. He wants me back in or wants me dead. Those are his only options. Luca's voice was a matter of fact, like he was discussing the weather. But he's also smart. He knows coming at you directly is a line that'll start a war. Today was a warning, a test to see if I'd break. And will you? No. The word was absolute. But I need to make sure he understands that. Mira's stomach dropped. How? Not the way you're thinking. I'm not going back to violence, but I have information Marco wants kept quiet. Leverage. I just need to remind him it exists. That sounds dangerous. Less dangerous than doing nothing. Mira sank onto her couch, suddenly exhausted. Luca stayed standing, giving her space. I don't know if I can do this, she said. Live like this, with threats and leverage and people like Vincent showing up. I understand if you can't. I won't blame you. But you'll be disappointed. I'll be devastated, Luca corrected, but I'll understand. The honesty of it made Mira want to cry. This is insane, she said. All of it. Normal people don't deal with this. We're not normal people. I'm extremely normal. You wrote letters to a stranger in prison for 2 years. That's not normal. Despite everything, Mira felt her mouth twitch. Fair point. Luca sat down on the opposite end of the couch, maintaining distance. Tell me what you need, to feel safe, to believe this is worth it. Whatever it is, I'll try to give it to you. Mira pulled her knees to her chest. I need to know you're not going to become the person Vincent thinks you are. The one who chooses violence and power over this. Over me. I won't. How can you be sure? Because I've been that person. I know what it costs, and I'd rather lose everything than go back to it. The conviction in his voice made something loosen in Mira's chest. I need time, she said, to process this, to figure out if I'm brave enough. Okay? And I need you to actually handle Vincent. Not violently, but I can't have him showing up at my job again. Done. And I need you to be honest with me about everything, even the scary parts. Always. Mira looked at him, really looked, at the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he held himself, like he was afraid one wrong move would make her bolt. You really think this can work? She asked. I think it's worth trying to find out, even though it's messy and complicated and probably doomed, especially because of that. Luca's expression softened. Perfect is boring, remember? Despite the fear still coiled in her stomach, Mira smiled. You're using my own words against me. You're a smart woman. Makes sense to listen to you. They sat in silence for a while. Not comfortable exactly, but not unbearable either. I should go, Luca said finally. Let you think. Mira nodded, but when he stood, she found herself saying, Wait! He stopped immediately. Tomorrow, she said. That terrible pasta place you mentioned, is the offer still open? Something in Luca's expression shifted, became lighter, hopeful. Yeah, he said. It is. Okay. Pick me up at 7. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Luca smiled. The real one, the one that made him look younger and less like someone who'd spent years in prison. 7, he confirmed. After he left, Mira sat in the quiet of her apartment, trying to process everything that had happened. Vincent's threats, Luca's promises, her own terrified decision to keep going anyway. She pulled out her laptop and opened that document she'd been writing in. Added a new line. I'm choosing this, choosing you. Even though it scares me. Even though I don't know how it ends. Because running is exhausting and you make me want to try. The next morning, Marcus cornered her during her break. Okay, what's going on? He demanded. You've been weird for weeks and yesterday you looked like someone died. Spill. Mira considered lying, considered deflecting. Instead, she said, I'm seeing someone. It's complicated. Marcus's eyes widened. Complicated how? Like he's married complicated or he's secretly a werewolf complicated? Neither. He's just from a different world than me. And I'm trying to figure out if I can handle that. Do you like him? Yeah, a lot. Does he treat you well? Mira thought about Luca's patience, his honesty, the way he saw her and chose to stay anyway. Better than I deserve. Then fuck the complications, Marcus said bluntly. Life's too short to run from good things because they're scary. When did you become wise? I've always been wise. You're just usually too neurotic to notice. Mira laughed despite herself. Fair enough. That night, Luca picked her up at exactly 7. He was wearing dark jeans and a button-down that looked casual but probably wasn't. And when Mira opened the door in her nicest sweater and the jeans that actually fit, his expression did something that made her stomach flip. You look beautiful, he said. Mira's face heated. You're obligated to say that. I'm really not, but you do. The restaurant was small, tucked into a side street she'd walked past 100 times without noticing. The kind of place with mismatched chairs and checkered tablecloths and a menu that hadn't changed in 30 years. You weren't kidding about terrible, Mira said, looking around. Wait until you try the carbonara. It's a crime against Italy. They ordered. The wine was cheap and slightly vinegary. The pasta was overcooked and drowning in cream. It was perfect. So, Luca said, twirling spaghetti on his fork. Vincent's been handled. Mira set down her glass. What does that mean? It means I had a conversation with Marco. Reminded him that certain information about certain offshore accounts would be very interesting to certain federal prosecutors. He's agreed to back off. Just like that? Marco's practical. He knows when to fold. Luca paused. There's still going to be fallout. People from my old life who will be curious or angry, or both. But the direct threats should stop. Should? Nothing's guaranteed. But it's the best I can do without doing things I promised I wouldn't do. Mira absorbed that. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is my mess. It's our mess now. Something in Luca's expression cracked open. Yeah? Yeah. Mira took a breath. I'm not saying this is going to be easy. I'm still going to panic and overthink and probably try to run at least 3 more times. But I want to try. For real this time. Say, even knowing what you're signing up for? I don't know what I'm signing up for. That's kind of the point. She met his eyes. But I know I'd rather figure it out with you than spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Luca reached across the table. His hand covered hers, warm and solid and real. I'm going to mess this up, he said quietly. I don't know how to be in a relationship. Don't know how to be normal. I'm going to disappoint you. I'm going to overthink everything and need constant reassurance and probably cry at inappropriate times, Mira countered. I'm a disaster. We're both disasters. Probably doomed. Definitely doomed. But we're doing it anyway? Yeah, Luca said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. We are. The pasta really was terrible. The wine was worse. But sitting across from Luca, his hand warm against hers, Mira felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. They walked back to her apartment slowly, neither in a hurry to end the night. The streets were quiet, the air cold enough to see their breath. Can I tell you something? Mira asked. Always. I'm still scared, but it's different now. Less like panic and more like anticipation, I guess. Like standing at the edge of something and knowing you're going to jump even though you can't see the bottom. That's terrifying, Luca said. Yeah, but also kind of exciting. You're braver than you think. If you say that one more time, I'm going to start believing it. Good. They stopped outside her building. Mira turned to face him, suddenly nervous. So, she said, what happens now? That's up to you. Mira thought about all the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons she should walk away. Then she thought about Luca's hand in hers, his patient understanding, the way he made her want to be braver. Come upstairs, she said. Luca's eyes widened slightly. You sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Inside her apartment, they stood in the small entryway, suddenly awkward. Mira hung up her coat with shaking hands. Do you want tea or coffee? I have both. And water. Obviously I have water. Everyone has water. I'm babbling. Mira. She looked at him. We don't have to do anything, Luca said gently. I'm happy just being here. The kindness of it made her chest ache. I know, but I want... She trailed off, not sure how to finish. What do you want? This, you, us. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I'm not good at being spontaneous or brave or any of the things Arya pretended to be, but I'm tired of being afraid. And I trust you, which is probably insane, but it's true. Luca crossed the space between them slowly, giving her time to change her mind. When he reached her, he cupped her face with both hands, gentle despite his size. You're sure? He asked. Mira nodded, not trusting her voice. The kiss was softer than she expected. Careful. Like he was afraid she'd break. When they pulled apart, Mira's hands were shaking and her heart was trying to escape her chest, but she felt more alive than she had in years. Okay, she breathed. Okay? Yeah, okay. Luca smiled against her temple. For what it's worth, I'm terrified too. Good, that makes me feel better. They moved to the couch, sat close but not quite touching, both trying to figure out how this worked. Tell me something true, Luca said. Something Arya never would have said. Mira thought about it. I've never done this before. Not really. I dated in college, but it was superficial, safe. I've never let anyone see me like this. Like what? Unedited, messy, real. I'm honored, Luca said, and he sounded like he meant it. Your turn. Something true. He was quiet for a moment. I spent most of my life being what other people needed. Strong, ruthless, in control. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be anything else. You're the first person who's made me want to remember. Mira's throat tightened. We're both kind of a mess, aren't we? Completely. But we're doing this? If you'll have me, Mira leaned against him, feeling his arm come around her shoulders. Solid, real, terrifying. Yeah, she said, I'll have you. They stayed like that for a long time, talking about nothing and everything. Luca told her about prison, the boredom, the noise, the way time moved differently when you had nothing but time. Mira told him about her childhood, her parents who'd never quite understood her, the way she'd learned to disappear into books because real life felt too loud. At some point, they ended up horizontal on the couch, Mira's head on Luca's chest, his fingers tracing absent patterns on her shoulder. "I should probably go," he said eventually, though he didn't move. "You could stay," Mira offered, then immediately panicked. "Not like that. I mean, you could sleep on the couch, if you want. No pressure." Luca's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. "Are you sure?" "No, but ask me anyway." "Can I stay?" "Yes." She got him a blanket and pillow, hyper-aware of how domestic this was, how normal, how absolutely terrifying. "Good night, Mira," Luca said from the couch. "Good night." In her bedroom, Mira lay in the dark, listening to the quiet sounds of someone else in her space. For the first time in years, her apartment didn't feel lonely. It felt like the beginning of something. And if that something was doomed or dangerous or destined to fall apart, well, at least she'd have tried. At least she'd have been brave, even if only for a little while. Morning came with weak sunlight filtering through Mira's bedroom curtains, and the smell of coffee she definitely hadn't made. She stumbled out of her room, still half asleep, to find Luca in her kitchen looking completely out of place and somehow perfectly at home at the same time. He'd folded the blanket she'd given him, stacked it neatly on the couch with the pillow, and was now attempting to navigate her ancient coffee maker. "I can't figure out your machine," he said without looking up. "It's like something from a museum." "It was my grandmother's," Mira said, her voice rough with sleep. "You have to jiggle the filter basket, or it doesn't seal right." Luca jiggled. The coffee maker sputtered to life. "Thanks," he said, finally turning to look at her. Then he stopped, something crossing his face that made Mira suddenly aware she was wearing pajama pants with cartoon cats on them, and a t-shirt that said, "Shh, I'm reading." "What?" she asked defensively. "Nothing. You're just cute in the morning." Mira's face heated. "I look like a disaster. A cute disaster. That's not a thing. It is now." The coffee maker beeped. Luca poured 2 cups, somehow knowing without asking that she took hers with too much cream and 1 sugar. They sat at her small kitchen table, knees almost touching in the cramped space. "So," Mira said, wrapping her hands around her mug. "This is weird, right? You being here in the morning?" "Extremely." "But good weird?" Luca's mouth curved. "Yeah, good weird." They drank their coffee in comfortable silence. Outside, the city was waking up. Traffic sounds, distant sirens, the rhythmic thump of someone's bass rattling through apartment walls. "I should probably go," Luca said eventually. "Let you get ready for work." "You don't have to." "I know, but I also don't want to overstay." Mira set down her cup. "Luca, you slept on my couch. I think we're past worrying about overstaying." Fair point." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncertain in a way that made him seem younger. "I'm not good at this. The morning after thing, even when nothing happened." "Me neither." "So we're both fumbling through it?" "Seems like." Luca stood, bringing his cup to the sink. Mira watched him rinse it, put it in the dish rack, and wondered when her kitchen had started feeling like a place where 2 people existed instead of just her. "Can I see you tonight?" he asked. "You saw me all last night, and I'd like to see you again tonight." Something warm bloomed in Mira's chest. "Yeah, okay." "Yeah? Don't sound so surprised. You're the one who said we're doing this." "I know. I just keep expecting you to change your mind." "I probably will," Mira said honestly. "At least 3 times before lunch. But right now, I want to see you tonight." Luca crossed back to her, leaned down, and kissed her forehead. The gesture was so unexpectedly tender that Mira forgot how to breathe for a second. "Tonight," he confirmed. After he left, Mira got ready for work on autopilot, her brain stuck on the fact that she'd woken up with someone else in her apartment and the world hadn't ended. She felt different. Lighter, maybe. Or possibly just terrified in a new way. Rachel texted halfway through Mira's commute. "Coffee after work? I need details about Mystery Man." Mira stared at the message, then typed back, "Can't tonight. Seeing him." The response was immediate. "OMG. Who is he?" Later. "I promise." The library was blessedly busy. Mira lost herself in the familiar rhythm of work, helping patrons find books, processing returns, shelving with the kind of mindless precision that let her brain quiet down. Around 2, Marcus appeared at her elbow. "So the guy from yesterday," he said casually, organizing a display of new releases. "The one who came looking for you." Mira's stomach dropped. "What guy?" "Tall, expensive coat, kind of had serial killer vibes." Marcus frowned. "He asked for you at the desk. I told him you were on your lunch break." "When was this?" "Yesterday, right after you went to the break room." Marcus looked at her. "He didn't find you?" "Yeah, he found me." "And?" "And he was just someone from my boyfriend's past." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "Boyfriend? When did that happen?" "It's new and complicated. The best ones usually are." Marcus paused. "This guy, though, Vincent, he said his name was, he seemed off. Like, don't walk down a dark alley with him off." "Your boyfriend know about him?" "Yeah, he handled it." "Handled it how?" "I'm choosing not to ask too many questions about that part." Marcus studied her for a long moment. "You're being careful, right? This isn't one of those situations where—" "I'm fine," Mira said, more sharply than she intended. "I'm sorry, I just—" "It's under control." "Okay?" Marcus didn't look convinced. "But if you need anything—" "I know, thanks." But standing there in the quiet library, surrounded by books and normalcy, Mira felt the weight of what she'd gotten herself into settle over her shoulders. Vincent showing up was a reminder that Luca's past wasn't actually past. It was alive and breathing and capable of walking into her workplace to deliver threats. She pulled out her phone and texted Luca. "Vincent came to the library yesterday, before you and I talked." Marcus saw him. 3 dots appeared immediately. How much did Marcus see? "Just that Vincent asked for me." "Nothing else. I'm sorry." "Not your fault. But we should talk about this tonight. I'll pick you up at 6. Mira put her phone away and tried to focus on work. Failed miserably. Spent the rest of her shift jumping at shadows and wondering if every patron who looked at her too long was another of Luca's ghosts come to haunt her. Luca arrived at exactly 6. He was waiting outside the library in the black car Mira had seen that first night, and when she climbed in, his expression was carefully neutral. "How bad?" he asked. "Marcus is suspicious, but he doesn't know anything specific." Luca pulled away from the curb. "What did you tell him?" "That you handled it. That I'm being careful." Mira looked at him. "I didn't mention the prison letters or the Mafia connections or any of the actually insane parts." Probably smart. They drove in silence for a few blocks before Mira realized they weren't heading toward her apartment. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere we can talk without walls listening." The paranoia in the statement should have scared her. Instead, it just made her tired. Luca took them to a waterfront park, mostly empty in the evening cold. They walked along the pier, breath fogging in the air, the city's skyline glittering across the water. "I need to be honest with you about something," Luca said finally. Mira's stomach clenched. "Okay." "The situation with Marco, with my old life. It's not as resolved as I made it sound." "What does that mean?" "It means I have leverage, yeah. Information that could hurt him, but using it makes me a permanent target, and not using it makes you vulnerable." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "There's no clean answer here, just degrees of bad." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to know what you're actually signing up for. Because it's not just me. It's bodyguards and security systems and always watching your back. It's never being completely sure you're safe." Mira pulled her coat tighter. "That's what you meant by handled, isn't it? You didn't make this go away. You just postponed it." "Yeah." "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" "Because I wanted one night where we could pretend to be normal." Luca's voice was rough. "One night where you weren't looking at me like I was a problem that needed solving." "I don't look at you like that." "You should. I am a problem." Mira was quiet for a long moment, watching the water lap against the pier supports. "What would happen if you gave Marco what he wanted? Went back?" I'd become the person I spent 2 years trying to stop being. Luca's jaw tightened, and I'd lose you in the process. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because you're here for the man who's trying to be better, not the one who solves problems with violence. He was right. Mira knew he was right. But standing there in the cold, watching him struggle with choices that had no good outcomes, she felt something shift in her chest. What if there was a third option, she asked. There isn't. How do you know? Have you actually looked for one, or are you just stuck between the two worst possibilities? Luca stared at her. What are you suggesting? I don't know, but you're smart. You got out of prison early by cooperating, by using your brain instead of force. Maybe there's a way to do that again. Marco's not the federal government. He doesn't make deals. But he's practical. You said so yourself. Mira's mind was racing now. What does he actually want? Like, really want? Me back in line. A show of loyalty. Or what? Or to make an example of me. But that costs him too, right? Starting a war, dealing with fallout, losing someone who knows how his operation works. Mira was thinking out loud now. What if you gave him something else? Not loyalty, but information. A different kind of value. Luca's expression shifted, became considering. You mean turn informant again? I mean, give him a reason to leave you alone that doesn't require you to go back or die trying to stay out. That's still using my old connections. Still being part of that world. Is it, though? Or is it using what you know to build something new? Mira grabbed his arm. I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm saying maybe there's one you haven't thought of yet. Luca looked at her like he was seeing someone different. You're kind of terrifying when you're problem solving. I work in a library. We're very good at research. This isn't a book, Mira. I know, but the principle's the same. You're looking at this like it's binary. In or out, safe or dangerous. But life doesn't actually work that way. No? No. It's messy and complicated, and usually the answer is somewhere in the middle where nobody's happy but everyone survives. She paused. What about witness protection? Could you? Already offered. I turned it down. Why? Because it meant disappearing. New identity, new city, no contact with anyone from my old life. He met her eyes. Including you. The words hit Mira like a physical blow. You chose this. Chose staying here, even knowing it was dangerous. I chose you. That's insane. Probably. Mira didn't know whether to kiss him or shake him. You can't make decisions like that based on someone you barely know. Too late. Already did. Luca, I spent 2 years writing to you. 2 years feeling like I knew you better than people I'd known my entire life. And then I got out, and you were real. And even more than I'd imagined. He caught her hand. So yeah, I chose you, and I'd do it again. Mira's eyes burned. You're an idiot. Probably. A romantic idiot. That too. She kissed him. Right there on the pier with the cold wind whipping around them and the city lights reflecting off the water. Kissed him like he was air and she was drowning. When they pulled apart, Luca's forehead rested against hers. We're going to figure this out, Mira said fiercely. There has to be a way. Even if there isn't, then we deal with it together. But we try first. Something in Luca's expression cracked. I don't deserve you. Shut up. Yes, you do. Mira, I mean it. Stop deciding what you deserve and just accept that I'm choosing to be here. She pulled back to look at him properly. You think you're the only one who's scared? I'm terrified, every day. But I'm doing it anyway because you're worth it. I'm really not. That's not your decision to make. Luca laughed, the sound surprised and rough. How did this happen? What? How did a shy librarian become the bravest person I know? I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn. Mira paused, and maybe a little bit in love with an idiot. The confession slipped out before she could stop it. Luca went very still. What did you say? Mira's face flamed. Nothing. Forget it. That was... Say it again. Luca, please. She forced herself to meet his eyes. I think I'm falling in love with you. Which is crazy because we've known each other for like 2 weeks in person, and the whole thing is based on letters written under false pretenses, and you're a literal criminal, and I'm a mess. So it's probably not love. It's probably just, I don't know, proximity and adrenaline and... Luca kissed her, cut off her spiral with the kind of kiss that made her forget her own name. I love you too, he said against her mouth. You don't have to say that just because I'm not. I'm saying it because it's true. Because I've been falling for you since your third letter, when you admitted you cried at the end of Charlotte's Web, even though you know it's coming. Mira's throat closed. That's a terrible reason to love someone. It's a perfect reason, because it means you feel things deeply, even when it hurts. They stood there, wrapped around each other, both shaking from cold and adrenaline and the weight of what they'd just admitted. We're insane, Mira whispered. Completely. This is going to be a disaster. Probably. But we're doing it? Yeah, Luca said, and he sounded more certain than he had about anything. We are. They drove back to Mira's apartment in charged silence. Inside, the familiar space felt different, charged with possibility and terror in equal measure. I should figure out the Marco situation, Luca said, pacing her small living room. Find an angle that doesn't require violence or going back. We'll figure it out, Mira corrected. Together. You can't be involved in this. Too late. I already am. Luca stopped pacing. Mira, if something happened to you because of me, it won't. You don't know that. Neither do you. But hiding me away or pushing me out isn't going to work. She crossed her arms. So either we're partners in this or we're not. Choose. The ultimatum hung between them. Partners, Luca said finally. Good. Then sit down and walk me through exactly what we're dealing with. For the next 2 hours, Luca laid it out. Marco's operation, what was left of it after the prosecutions, the power structure, the money flows, the leverage points. Mira listened, asked questions, took notes on her laptop like she was researching a particularly complicated reference question. Okay, she said finally, staring at her screen. So Marco's main income now is through legitimate businesses that front for money laundering. Yeah. And he's vulnerable if those businesses get scrutinized too closely. Right. But shutting them down would require federal attention, which means I'd have to cooperate again, which puts a target on my back permanently. Unless, Mira said slowly, you weren't the one who brought the attention. Luca frowned. What do you mean? You said Marco's practical. He responds to incentives. What if instead of threatening him, you gave him a reason to legitimize, made it more profitable to go straight than to keep hiding dirty money? How? I don't know, but there are programs for that, right? Transitions out of criminal enterprises? What if you connected him with resources that help him actually clean up his operation instead of just pretending to? Luca stared at her. That's actually not a terrible idea. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. I'm impressed. He rubbed his jaw, thinking. There are a few organizations that do that work. Help criminals transition to legitimate business. It's not perfect, but it's something. And if Marco thinks it's his idea, thinks he's getting something out of it, he might go for it. And I stay out of it, just make the introduction. Exactly. Luca was quiet for a long moment. It might not work, but it might. And it's better than the alternatives. When did you become a criminal strategist? About 2 hours ago. I'm learning as I go. Despite everything, Luca smiled. I really do love you. The words still made Mira's stomach flip. Yeah, well, try not to get us killed, and we'll call it even. They worked through the details until Mira's eyes started crossing and Luca's coffee had gone cold. Finally, he closed her laptop. That's enough for tonight, he said. Your brain needs a break. My brain is fine. Your brain is running on fumes and anxiety. He pulled her up from the couch. Come on. Where are we going? Nowhere. We're just going to exist for 5 minutes without plotting or planning or worrying. Mira let him lead her to the couch. They sat close, his arm around her shoulders, her head tucked against his chest. This is nice, she said after a while. Yeah. Weird, but nice. Are you ever going to stop calling this weird? Probably not. Luca's chest rumbled with quiet laughter. They sat like that until Mira's breathing evened out and the tension started to drain from her shoulders. Thank you, Luca said softly. For what? For not running. For staying even when it got complicated. for being smarter than me. I'm not smarter than you. You are. You just don't know it yet. Mira tilted her head to look at him. I'm scared. I know. But I meant what I said about figuring this out together. I know that too. Okay. Good. She settled back against him. Don't let me fall asleep. I still need to eat dinner. We could order something. The number for the Chinese place is on my fridge. They ordered too much food and ate it sitting on her living room floor because the kitchen table was too small. Talked about nothing important, her favorite books, his terrible experiences with prison food, whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Normal things. Human things. And for a few hours, Mira let herself believe they might actually pull this off. That love and stubbornness in Chinese takeout could be enough to build something real from the wreckage of their complicated beginning. Later, after Luca had left and Mira was alone in her apartment, she pulled out her laptop again, opened that document where she'd been tracking her thoughts. We said I love you today, she typed. It should feel too soon, too fast, too everything. But it doesn't. It feels like the only true thing in all of this. Like maybe we've been building toward it since the first letter, and finally saying it out loud was just catching up to what already existed. I'm still scared, still have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway. That has to count for something. She saved the document, shut her laptop, and crawled into bed. Tomorrow they'd contact the organizations Luca mentioned. Start building a path forward that didn't require him to choose between his soul and her safety. Tomorrow they'd be smart and careful and strategic. Tonight, she just let herself feel this. The terrifying, exhilarating reality of being in love with someone impossible. And somehow, that was enough. The morning after felt surreal in the way most significant shifts do. Like waking up in a world that looked the same but operated under different rules. Mira found Luca in her kitchen, attempting to make coffee with her ancient machine that required a degree in engineering to operate properly. He'd folded the blanket she'd given him into a precise square on the couch, and seeing him there, rumpled and real in her small space, made something in her chest go tight. I can't figure out your coffee maker, he admitted, stepping back from it like it might attack. I think it's broken. It's temperamental. You have to hold down the button and tap the side twice. Mira demonstrated, and the machine sputtered to life. See? Easy. That's not easy. That's witchcraft. Says the man who ran a criminal organization. Different skill set. Luca watched the coffee drip with suspicious attention. I didn't want to wake you by making noise. I was already awake. I'm not good at sleeping when things are different. Different good or different bad? Mira considered the question while pulling down 2 mugs. Different scary, but also different good. It's confusing. Tell me about it. They drank coffee at her small kitchen table, knees almost touching in the cramped space. Morning light filtered through the window, turning everything soft and golden. It should have been awkward, this strange domesticity between 2 people still figuring out what they were to each other. Instead, it felt easy, natural. I have to work today, Mira said, but tonight, do you want to do something? Like actual something, not just sitting around being terrified. What did you have in mind? I don't know. Normal people things? Movie? Dinner that isn't terrible pasta? I'm bad at this. Movies sound good. Luca paused. I should warn you, I haven't been to a theater in 3 years. If I do something weird, just kick me. Like what? I don't know. Flinch at loud noises, sit with my back to the wall. Prison habits die hard. The casual way he said it made Mira's heart hurt. We can sit wherever you're comfortable. Thanks. She left for work feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Marcus took one look at her face and grinned. You had a good night, he said. Not a question. Shut up. I'm just saying, you look less like someone expecting the apocalypse and more like someone who might actually enjoy being alive. It's a good look on you. Mira tried to scowl but couldn't quite manage it. I'm still terrified. But you're doing it anyway. That's growth. Maybe it was. The day passed in a blur of returned books and patron questions and the comfortable rhythm of work. Mira caught herself checking her phone more than usual, smiling at the messages Luca sent. Pictures of the city with dry commentary about how much had changed, questions about whether she preferred action movies or comedies, a photo of a dog he'd seen in the park with the caption, "Thought you'd like this." She saved every single one. At 6, she walked home through streets that felt less threatening than they had a week ago. Found Luca waiting outside her building, hands in his pockets, looking at her like she was the only person in the world worth seeing. "Hi," she said. "Hi yourself." They went to see some action movie neither of them cared about. Luca chose seats in the back corner where he could see all the exits, and Mira didn't comment on it. She bought popcorn they didn't eat and candy that tasted like childhood. When something exploded on screen, she felt Luca tense beside her, and without thinking, she reached for his hand. He held on like she was an anchor. Afterward, walking back to her apartment, Luca said, "That wasn't so bad." "The movie or the whole sitting in public thing?" "Both, though the movie was pretty terrible." "Agreed, but the company was good." "Yeah?" He looked at her sideways, almost shy. It was. At her door, they stood in that uncertain space where they both knew he could come up, but neither quite wanted to assume. "Do you want—" Mira started. "Can I—" Luca said at the same time. They laughed, the tension breaking. "You first," Mira said. "Can I take you to dinner tomorrow? Somewhere nice. Not terrible pasta, actual nice." "Like a date?" "Yeah, like a date." The words settled between them, making everything suddenly more real. "I'd like that," Mira said. "But I'm going to be awkward and probably spill something." "I'm counting on it." She invited him up. They ended up on her couch again, this time with less uncertainty, more comfort. Luca told her about his plans. He'd been looking into legitimate business opportunities, ways to use his organizational skills without the criminal element. Consulting, maybe, or logistics. "I'm trying to figure out who I am without all the other stuff," he said. "It's harder than it sounds." "I get that. I've spent my whole life being invisible. Trying to figure out how to be visible without Arya as a buffer, it's terrifying." "You're doing pretty well so far." "I'm faking it." "Aren't we all?" Mira shifted to look at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you regret it? The cooperation deal, the testimony, all of it? Because you could have kept your sentence, kept your connections, kept being that version of yourself." Luca was quiet for a long moment. "Every choice has a cost. I gave up a lot. Power, respect, the only life I'd ever known. But I got something better." "What?" "The chance to be something else. Someone else." He met her eyes. "The chance to meet you." Mira's throat went tight. "That's a lot of pressure." "I'm not saying you saved me. I'm saying you made me want to save myself. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yeah, because one's codependent and unhealthy, and the other's just two people choosing each other, choosing better." Mira thought about that, about choice, about the difference between running from something and running toward it. "I choose this," she said quietly. "You, us, whatever this becomes." Luca's hand found hers. "Me too." The next week unfolded with a rhythm that felt almost normal. Luca picked her up from work. They had dinner, sometimes nice, sometimes takeout on her couch. He met Rachel, who cornered Mira in the bathroom at the restaurant and whispered, "Holy shit, he's gorgeous and he looks at you like you hung the moon. Keep him." "I'm trying," Mira had whispered back. But normal didn't last. It never does. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Mira was shelving returns when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Mira Collins?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "Yes?" "This is Special Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I need to speak with you about Luca Moretti." Mira's blood went cold. "What about him?" "Not over the phone. Can you come to our office this afternoon?" "I'm at work." "This is important. 2:00? Mira's hands shook as she agreed and hung up. She immediately called Luca. "FBI wants to talk to me," she said when he answered. "About you." Silence. Then, "Did they say what about?" "No, just that it's important." Her voice cracked. "Luca, what's happening?" "I don't know, but I'm coming with you. They might not let you." "I'll wait outside then. You're not doing this alone." At 1:45, they stood outside the federal building. Luca couldn't come in. Conflict of interest, the security guard said, but he squeezed her hand before she went through the metal detector. "Whatever they say, remember, you didn't do anything wrong," he said. "Then why do I feel guilty?" Because the FBI has that effect on people. Agent Chen was younger than Mira expected, with sharp eyes and a handshake that meant business. She led Mira to a small conference room with no windows and a recording device on the table. "You're not under investigation," Chen said immediately, which somehow made Mira more nervous. "But we need to ask you about your relationship with Luca Moretti." "Why?" "Because Marco DeLuca was found dead this morning, and Luca Moretti is our primary suspect." The room tilted. Mira gripped the edge of the table. "That's impossible," she said. "Luca was with me last night, all night." Chen's expression didn't change. "What time did he leave?" "He didn't. He stayed over. We had breakfast together. He left my apartment at 8:30 this morning." "Can anyone verify that?" "My neighbor probably saw him leave, Mrs. Patterson. She sees everything." Mira's heart hammered. "But Luca wouldn't do this. He's done with that life. He told me, 'People say a lot of things, Ms. Collins.' He meant it." Marco DeLuca was killed execution style between 6 and 7 this morning. Professional hit, the kind Luca Moretti used to specialize in. "He was with me," Mira insisted, "all night, all morning. He made coffee. Terrible coffee because my machine is complicated. He didn't leave." Chen studied her for a long moment. "You care about him?" "Yes." "Enough to lie for him?" "I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth." Mira's voice shook with anger now, not fear. "Luca didn't kill Marco DeLuca. He was in my apartment, in my bed, with me." The admission hung in the air. Chen made a note. "We'll need to verify your statement. Talk to your neighbor. Check security footage from your building if there is any. Check whatever you want. You'll see I'm telling the truth." Chen clicked off the recorder. "Off the record? I hope you're right, because if Luca Moretti is really trying to go straight, he's going to need all the help he can get. His old world doesn't let people leave." "He already left." "Did he? Or did his old world just follow him?" The question haunted Mira as she left the building. Luca was waiting across the street, and the relief on his face when he saw her almost broke her. "What did they say?" he asked. "Marco's dead. They think you did it." Luca went very still. "When?" "This morning, 6 to 7. I was with you." "I know. I told them. They're going to verify." Mira grabbed his arm. "Luca, tell me the truth. Did you have anything to do with this?" "No." The word was absolute. "I swear to you, Mira, I didn't touch Marco, didn't order it, didn't even know it was happening." She searched his face looking for the lie, found only truth. "Okay," she said. "I believe you." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Something in Luca's expression cracked. He pulled her into a hug, right there on the street, holding on like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. "Thank you," he said into her hair. "For what?" "For believing me. For not running." "I'm terrified," Mira admitted. "But I'm not running." They went back to her apartment. Luca paced while Mira made tea. Neither of them drank. "Someone's setting me up," he said. "Marco's death looks like my work because it's supposed to. They want the FBI looking at me." "Who's they?" "Could be anyone. Marco had enemies. Hell, I had enemies. People who'd benefit from both of us being out of the picture." "What do we do?" "We wait. Let the FBI do their investigation. Your alibi's solid. The truth will come out." But Mira could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched. This was the violence he'd walked away from, coming back to claim him anyway. "What if they don't believe me?" she asked. "They will. You're the most honest person I've ever met. They'll see that." "I lied to you for 2 years?" "You performed. That's different." Luca stopped pacing, came to sit beside her. "Mira, listen to me. Whatever happens, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If this goes bad, if they arrest me, if I can't fight this, I need you to walk away. Don't get dragged down with me." "Absolutely not." "Mira, no. We're in this together. You don't get to martyr yourself to protect me. I'm trying to be practical, and I'm trying to tell you that I'm not going anywhere." She grabbed his hand. "You spent 2 years in prison alone. You're not doing it again, not if I can help it." Luca's eyes went suspiciously bright. "You barely know me." "I know enough. And I'm choosing to stay." He kissed her then, desperate and grateful and terrified. Mira kissed him back, trying to pour every ounce of certainty she had into the contact. When they broke apart, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "I don't deserve you," he said. "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." The FBI came back 2 days later. Agent Chen showed up at Mira's door with another agent, older, male, skeptical. "We've verified your statement," Chen said. "Security footage shows Luca entering your building at 7 p.m. and leaving at 8:30 the next morning. Your neighbor confirmed seeing him leave. Time of death puts Marco DeLuca's murder during that window." Relief flooded through Mira so intensely she had to sit down. "So he's clear?" "Of the murder, yes. But we have other questions." Chen's expression was carefully neutral. "Someone wanted Marco dead and wanted it to look like Luca's work. We need to know who." "I don't know," Luca said from behind Mira. He'd been standing in the kitchen, listening. "But I have suspicions." "Talk to me." Over the next hour, Luca laid out the web of connections, betrayals, and power plays that defined his old world. Names Mira didn't recognize, territories she didn't understand, motivations that made her stomach turn. "Vincent Russo," Luca said finally. "He'd benefit most from both Marco and me being gone. Opens up territory, eliminates competition. And he's smart enough to make it look like I did it." Chen made notes. "We'll look into it." "Do that. Because I'm done with this. All of it. And I'm not going back." After the agents left, Mira and Luca sat in silence. The weight of everything, the murder, the investigation, the world Luca couldn't quite escape, pressed down on them. "I'm sorry," Luca said finally. "You didn't sign up for this." "Actually, I kind of did. When I wrote that first letter." Mira turned to look at him. "I knew who you were, what you'd done, and I wrote to you anyway. So yeah, this is scary and messy and way more complicated than I wanted. But it's not a surprise. It should have stayed in the past. But it didn't, so we deal with it, together." Luca pulled her close. She went willingly, tucking herself against his side. "What happens if they arrest Vincent?" she asked. "Then it's over, really over. The old life can't touch me if there's no one left to care." "And if they don't?" "Then we figure it out, keep being careful, keep moving forward." Mira thought about that, about the future stretching ahead of them, uncertain and potentially dangerous, about the choice between safety and connection. "I vote we move forward," she said. "Yeah?" "Yeah." The FBI arrested Vincent Russo 3 days later, found evidence linking him to Marco's murder and a dozen other crimes. The news hit the papers, big enough to matter, small enough that most people wouldn't connect it to Luca. Mira read about it over breakfast while Luca made coffee with her temperamental machine, finally getting the hang of the button-tap combination. "It's over," she said. Luca looked up from the coffee maker. "What?" "Vincent. They got him. It's in the news." He came to read over her shoulder, and Mira felt the tension drain out of him. "It's really over," he repeated like he couldn't quite believe it. "So what now?" Luca set down the coffee pot, turned to face her. "Now we get to figure out what normal looks like, if you still want to." "Are you kidding? I've been waiting for normal." "I should warn you, I'm probably terrible at it." "Me too. We can be terrible together." 3 months later, Mira stood in Luca's new apartment, the one he'd rented after deciding hotel living was unsustainable, and marveled at how different everything was. He'd started a consulting business. Legitimate, boring, successful. Companies paid him to optimize their operations, and he was good at it in a way that made use of his organizational skills without the criminal element. Mira had started writing again, not letters this time, but stories. Real stories under her own name. They weren't published yet, but Luca read every word and told her they would be. "You're biased," she'd said. "I'm honest. There's a difference." They still had bad days. Days when Luca tensed at loud noises or checked over his shoulder out of habit. Days when Mira spiraled into anxiety and needed reassurance that she wasn't too much, too broken, too ordinary. But the good days outweighed the bad. Rachel had been right. Luca looked at Mira like she hung the moon. But more importantly, he looked at her like she was real. Like the messy, imperfect, anxious woman she actually was deserved to be seen and known and chosen anyway. And Mira looked back at him the same way. I have something for you, Luca said one evening as they sat on his couch. Nicer than hers, but they still ended up at her apartment most nights because it felt more like home. He handed her a box. Inside was a set of leather-bound journals, expensive and beautiful. For your stories, he explained, so you can write them by hand first if you want, or just doodle. Whatever. Mira's eyes stung. This is too much. It's not enough, but it's a start. She kissed him, trying to communicate everything she couldn't quite put into words. When they broke apart, she said, I love you. The words slipped out without permission. Mira froze, terrified. But Luca just smiled, that real smile that made him look younger and lighter and free. I love you too, he said. Have for a while now. Was just waiting for you to catch up. How long? Probably since that first coffee. Definitely since you agreed to go grocery shopping with me. Who does that? Someone who's terrible at saying no to attractive criminals. Former criminal. Right. Former. They fell into comfortable silence. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, they'd built something fragile and real and worth protecting. Do you ever regret it? Mira asked, writing back to me. All of this? Never. Luca pulled her closer. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm a neurotic librarian who eats cereal for dinner. You're brave and kind, and you see people, really see them. You saw me when I was at my lowest and decided I was worth knowing. That's everything. Mira blinked back tears. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. I love you. You love me. We're both disasters, but we're disasters together. What else matters? I guess nothing. Exactly. 6 months after that, Luca moved into Mira's apartment. It was too small for 2 people and all their combined stuff, but neither of them cared. A year later, Mira published her first story. It wasn't about them, not exactly, but Luca recognized pieces. The woman who learned to be brave. The man who learned to be gentle. The connection that saved them both. You made me the hero, he said after reading it. You are the hero. I'm really not. You are to me. 2 years later, they moved to a bigger place. Luca's business had grown. Mira had published 3 more stories and was working on a novel. They adopted a cat that hated everyone except them and made their lives slightly more chaotic. It wasn't perfect. They still fought about stupid things like whose turn it was to do dishes, and serious things like Mira's tendency to shut down when stressed and Luca's habit of trying to fix everything. But they fought fair, and they always came back to each other. One night, curled up together after a particularly stupid argument about whether to get a second cat, Luca said, I still can't believe you're real. I'm extremely real and extremely annoyed with you right now. I know, but underneath the annoyance, you love me. Unfortunately. Fortunately. Mira sighed. Yeah, fortunately. So can we get the second cat? Absolutely not. One is enough chaos. But, Luca Moretti, I swear if you bring home another cat, I will write you as the villain in my next story. You wouldn't. Try me. He grinned. I love when you get bossy. I'm always bossy. You just finally noticed. I noticed. I just think it's hot. You're ridiculous. You love me anyway. I really do. And she did. Despite the chaos and the fear and the complicated history. Despite the fact that they'd started as a fantasy and turned into something real and messy and imperfect. Or maybe because of it. 3 years after Luca walked out of prison, Mira woke up in their shared apartment with sunlight streaming through the windows and Luca's arm around her waist. Their cat, they'd gotten the second one, Mira had caved after exactly 2 weeks, was purring on her feet. It was ordinary, normal, everything she'd been afraid to want. Morning, Luca mumbled against her shoulder. Morning. Coffee? Please. He got up, padded to the kitchen in his pajama pants. Mira heard him coaxing the coffee maker. They'd bought a new one, but Luca insisted on keeping the old one because it reminded him of their beginning. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through messages. Rachel asking about dinner. Her editor asking about her manuscript deadline. Marcus sending memes. Normal. Beautifully, terrifyingly normal. Hey, Mira, Luca called from the kitchen. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For taking a chance on me. For not running. for making me believe I could be more than what I was. Mira got up, went to the kitchen. Luca was standing by the counter, coffee in hand, looking at her with that expression that still made her stomach flip. "You did that yourself," she said. "I just stuck around to watch." "We did it together." "Yeah, we did." He handed her coffee, made perfectly because he'd finally mastered her preferences after 3 years of trial and error. "I have something to ask you," he said. "Okay? Don't panic." That's not reassuring. Luca reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Mira's heart stopped. "I know we're both disasters," he said, "and I know this is probably too soon or too late or too something, but I also know I want to be a disaster with you for the rest of my life, if you'll have me." He opened the box. The ring inside was simple, beautiful, exactly what she would have chosen if she'd been choosing. "Luca, you can say no. I'll understand. We can keep going like we are. But I wanted you to know that you're it for me. You're the person I choose, every day, every time." Mira looked at the ring, then at Luca, then back at the ring. Her hands were shaking, her eyes were wet. Everything in her wanted to panic, to list all the reasons this was too much, too fast, too everything. Instead, she heard herself say, "Yes." "Yes? Yes, obviously yes. Were you expecting me to say no?" "I was preparing for the possibility." "Well, stop preparing. I'm saying yes." Luca's face did something complicated, relief and joy and disbelief all at once. He slipped the ring on her finger with shaking hands. "I love you," he said. "I love you too. Even though you're ridiculous and we're both disasters. Especially because of that." "Especially because of that," Mira agreed. They stood in the kitchen, holding each other, while the coffee got cold, and the cats demanded breakfast, and the world kept spinning. And for the first time in her life, Mira wasn't afraid of being seen, because the person seeing her loved every imperfect piece. The wedding was small. Rachel and Marcus, a few people from Luca's consulting business. Agent Chen, surprisingly, who'd become something like a friend after everything. No family. Mira's parents had never understood her, and Luca's were long gone. But the people who showed up were the ones who mattered. Mira wore a simple dress. Luca wore a suit that made her forget how to breathe. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising honesty and patience and the willingness to keep choosing each other, even when it was hard. "I promise to believe you when you're scared," Mira said, her voice shaking. "To see you for who you are, not who you were. To be brave even when I'm terrified." "I promise to be patient when you panic," Luca said. "To remind you that you're more than you think you are. To choose you every single day." When they kissed, Marcus cheered and Rachel cried, and the whole thing was perfect in its imperfection. At the reception, small, in the same terrible pasta restaurant where they'd had their first real date, Luca pulled Mira onto the makeshift dance floor. "I can't dance," she warned. "Neither can I. We'll figure it out." They swayed in a circle, neither quite on beat, both trying not to step on the other's feet. "Do you remember the first letter?" Luca asked. "Which one? Mine or yours?" "Yours, the one where you introduced yourself as Arya." "That feels like a lifetime ago." "It was. We're different people now." "Better people?" "I'd like to think so." Mira rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I'm glad I wrote to you, even though it was terrifying, even though I was lying." "I'm glad you did too, even though you were terrible at lying. I got better." "You really didn't. Rude. Honest." They danced until the song ended and another began. Around them, their small circle of people laughed and talked and celebrated. And Mira thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, lonely, invisible, convinced she had to be someone else to be worth knowing. That woman wouldn't recognize her now. This Mira laughed too loud and didn't apologize. Spoke her mind even when her voice shook. Chose connection over safety. This Mira was brave. Not fearless, she was still terrified most of the time. But brave enough to try anyway. "What are you thinking?" Luca asked. "That I'm happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy." Me too. Even though we're disasters? Especially because we're disasters." The night wound down. Rachel hugged Mira so hard she couldn't breathe. "You did good, kid," Rachel said. "Really good." I got lucky. No, you were brave. There's a difference. Marcus gave Luca an elaborate handshake that turned into a hug. You hurt her, and I'll hurt you, he said, only half joking. Understood, Luca said seriously. Agent Chen cornered them both before leaving. I'm happy for you, both of you. You beat the odds. We're still beating them, Luca said. Keep it up. They went home to their apartment, the one they'd made together, full of Mira's books and Luca's carefully organized files and the chaos of two cats who thought 3 a.m. was playtime. So, Mira said, kicking off her shoes, we're married. Appears so. How do you feel? Terrified. Happy. Lucky. Luca pulled her close. How about you? Same. All of it. Any regrets? Not one. Good. They stood in their living room, holding each other, while the city hummed outside their window. I never thought I'd have this, Mira admitted. Someone who sees me, really sees me, and stays anyway. I never thought I'd deserve it, Luca said. But you make me want to try, every day. We're quite a pair. The best kind of disaster. The best kind, Mira agreed. And she meant it. Because they were messy and imperfect and still figuring things out. Because Mira still panicked and Luca still checked over his shoulder sometimes. Because they fought about stupid things and made up over terrible pasta and loved each other fiercely despite all their flaws. Or maybe because of them. Years later, when Mira finally published the novel she'd been working on, a story about a woman who learned to be brave and a man who learned to be gentle, the dedication read simply, For Elle, you saw me. Thank you for staying. And when Luca read it, sitting in their apartment with their cats curled up beside him, he cried. Not because it was sad, but because it was true. They'd both been broken in different ways, both hiding behind versions of themselves they thought the world wanted to see. But together, they'd learned something important. Being seen, really, truly seen, was terrifying and vulnerable and sometimes painful. But it was also the only way to be loved, really, deeply, imperfectly loved. And that made all the fear worth it, every single time.